Well, as I mentioned to you, I'm using Dr. Collins's book as a series, and I can see the inklings of the things he talks about in this gospel today. He has a distinction, by the way, when you're talking about people not getting along and politics and things like that. Francis Collins is the only medical doctor who was able to serve as the chair of the National Institute of Health under 3 different presidents, all different parties. So he knows a few things about talking to people of different personalities. He's also the one who mapped the human genome, and he's also the one who found the cure for sickle cell. So the man is an interesting person, and I especially think there are inklings here, what we've just read in the gospel. You know, we've learned from this morning's gospel that there are some people even Jesus can't win over to his side. Now, this story is the only one in the whole Testament, whole New Testament, where someone turns away from the offer of eternal life from Jesus. It's interesting, too, because we as older people, most of us here being older people, look at this wealthy young man, and we tend to assume he's just like our concept of young people today, who put a lot of emphasis on stuff and looking great. But, you know, that's what really happened in our Bible study. That thing came up, well, he's just like kids today, all the boomers in the room. And that is so unfair. All of us of any age, have really too much stuff in our lives. Too much stuff. You know, ironically, first we obsess about getting the stuff, and then later we have to find a place for our stuff or get rid of the stuff. After all of that, we are none the wiser of all the energy we've expended. So if we're wrong about this young man simply being callous, then who is he? Well, if you read between the lines, you'll see this young man obviously had listened to Jesus preach. He may have even followed him around. Jesus seems to know him. He says he loves him. Of course, he loves us all. But he seems to know him at least enough to be able to remind him how the young man is already keeping the law of Moses that Jesus lists. But then, Jesus asks him to surrender the only thing, the one thing that I think Jesus already knows would be most impossible for this youngster. He asks him to give up his core identity, right in the center of who you are, the person he thinks he is, and his deepest belief about his value, about who he is as a wealthy young man. Give it all up and follow me, Jesus says. And there's that tiny eye in the needle that is so hard to give the camel of belief to go through. My message to you today is the second in this series about learning how to talk with people in these troubled times when contradicting beliefs lead not to understanding, but to arguments, and some nasty ones, too. We've reached the point, especially this last week, of not turning on the news. So I'm relying on the roadmap that Dr. Francis Collins has given us in his new book, The Road to Wisdom, on truth, science, faith, and trust. And believe me, we are heading into a period where the best thing we can do for ourselves and our country is to learn the way back to wisdom and understanding. You know, we ask, what on earth is going on with people these days? What's happening to us? The other day in Bible study, someone mentioned that she was trying to talk to a friend to discuss something, but in the end, her friend said, "Well, that may be true for you, but it's not true for me." I'm sure all of us have had an encounter like this. Is it really true that there are different truths for different people? What happened to the real foundational truths we learned in the course of our lives? The ones that tell us about morals and tell us about how we treat other people. Dr. Collins tells us that longing for truth is a critical part of being a human. Down deep, with few exceptions, nearly all of us agree with the premise that truth matters, especially when it comes to objective truth. But why are we paddling around in this awful soup of misconceptions and lies today? And the hatred and confusion it causes. That the friend of yours who tells you she has her own truth probably won't create a minor or major problem if she is just giving her opinion on some minor things like, was this the movie, the best ever movie? Or, different things about her, what color shoes she should wear for the day. But if her opinion is used to persuade someone not to wear a mask when visiting somebody in the hospital after they've already been exposed to COVID, then mistaking opinion for truth can kill, or at the very least, can destroy. Let's think about the different levels of truth for a moment. We often don't do this, and this is an exercise for all of you this week to think about truth, and also we'll get to think about untruths. So at the very core of information, there's what we call necessary truth. By this we mean absolute proven facts that are essential to the pattern of the real world. One thing would be mathematics. Mathematics are the grid and groundwork for life and the universe. Irrefutable things that constitute what we know, like mathematics. The next circle is that of firmly established facts. These are well-documented things any reasonable person would agree to, like the Amazon River is in South America, the Holocaust really happened, 2 planes brought down the Twin Towers on 9/11. But using those last 2 examples is where the concept of a reasonable doubt comes in. Think how many times we've heard opposing opinions about the Holocaust, about 9/11, even though there are people who have survived who were there and can tell you this is what happened. Some people refuse to accept that. I think a lot these days, if you're ever on some of these the social sites, for some reason, and maybe it's because reason has gone out the window, the flat earthers have come back into vogue. These are the people who believe the Earth's not round, it's flat. And even though you can see the beautiful blue marble in space, they said that's something that those people made up for you. We never went to the moon. And if you ask them, in your mind, how can the world be flat? They said, well, look, you can see. And they said, well, what happens when you go to the edge? They said, well, you can take a ship or plane down to the 10 degrees south, but then they make you stop. Nobody's allowed to go to Antarctica any farther than this point. And what you find there is a wall of ice. All right. So that's the kind of things that you run into when reason no longer functions. So the next level of truth is where we enter into the zone of objective opinion. You know, and these are nice things, things that you deal with every day. You know, the opinions, like the Yankees are the best baseball team, don't hit me. I could have said Red Sox, and I don't know what would happen. We're not. Or let's say dogs are better pets than cats, or disagreements on this level don't threaten the order of things. In fact, they make life more interesting because people do have different tastes, so it gives us something to talk about, even if we don't agree. They don't have to be true for everybody. But now those first two orders of truths, the necessary truths and the established facts, have been widely accepted by humanity until recently. Until recently. Why? What has happened since the time many of us were kids? You know, well, Dr. Collins comes up with his own theory. He says that after humanity lived through 2 world wars, the Vietnam War, other wars, the Great Depression, the specter of nuclear war, things changed. We entered what is called by scientists the postmodern era. You've probably heard this used. What is that? What happens is objective truths in science, history, medicine, and morality become negotiable. They used to be proven facts, but now they're brought into question. We no longer trust what our country's government is telling us is the truth, and have come to distrust people in authority like politicians, clergy, the police. When people are living in an era with a lot of uncertainty, they try to gather information to decide what they want to believe. But here in an era where there is no moral consequence for deceiving people, we find ourselves confronted with this sea of untruths, you hear it all the time, that are used to lead people astray. Collins separates the untruths into several categories. First of all, number one, there's an ignorance, which is not possessing relative information. Now, he points out that this is not the same thing as stupidity, because intelligent people can still be ignorant about a particular object or subject. Second thing is falsehoods. That's something that can be shown to be untrue. But if you repeat a statement without actually knowing it's true, this too is a falsehood, otherwise known as misinformation. And we see so much of this today. This is where social media is so damaging. And it's also, as was being pointed out to me last night, social media is a source that isolates us. It puts us alone in front of a screen, out of human contact. And for many people, it leads to such tremendous loneliness and despair. Social media seldom fact checks. You know, case in point, telling people that they can prevent COVID by drinking bleach would be a drastic example, but we know it happened. Insisting that migrants eat people's pets is an example as well. How foolish. And then there are lies, straight out lies, different from falsehood, straight out lies. It's an intentional distortion of the truth. When telling a lie, the liar knows it's not true. If the liar also knows the potential of doing harm by telling the lie to others, then that is evil. That is evil. Last year, I buried my downstairs neighbor after we couldn't get her to answer. She used to watch Fox News 24/7. And Fox News told her that COVID shots were poison. So she never got it, but she did get COVID. And when we couldn't get into the house, I had to help a policeman crawl through her window to find her body. That's what a lie can do. You know, think of every single political campaign that's being run right now. You just go home and turn on this set, you'll see it. And you're going to see it's in the process of giving out lies. It's in the process of seeking out information to form our own beliefs that we can become vulnerable to being manipulated into purely evil intent. We live in a time of alarmist statements by so many people. It's hardly surprising that we have anxiety when there are no easy answers to why things are happening. And this gives birth to conspiracy theories. When you don't know why something is happening, you have to blame someone. And the easiest way to do that is to come up with this mysterious, faceless them. If something happens, it has to be them that caused it. The mystical, present, ever-present them. They are the reason. They are hidden, and they're controlling things. A good example of this is the new fact we've heard in the last couple of weeks that the government controls the weather and can aim a hurricane at the red states. Welcome to postmodernism. Core to our beliefs are moral truths. And when we look at truths, we are in the process of developing a web of belief within us. Collins and others see it as like a spider web with you in the center and the things that are closest and dearest to you right around there, you, and then another round a little farther out of more important things, but still a little bit questionable, and so forth and so on. So this web of beliefs is really the driver behind how willing we are to listen to one another and to entertain other ideas, even if they threaten our own beliefs somewhat. All of us have some degree of what Collins calls as cognitive bias toward other information. You know, if you've made up your mind, you hear what you want to hear. In fact, one of the most destructive things today is when the news media, I'm making that different from social media, and the internet-driven social media reports information and lies with the same weight they give to proven information. In particular, conspiracy theories can actually be addictive because it's like a drug because it offers a rush of relief when you finally find out who they is or who you blame for what's going on. So, you know, what can we as individuals do to contribute to turning this around? We're going to take this up next week in much more depth. But in the meantime, until we meet again, I want to ask you to give some attention to 4 things. Number 1, try to construct your own web of belief. Cut some time for yourself and sit down and say, what is it that's most important to me? How much does being compassionate mean to me? What are the things that if I didn't have them in my life, I would be completely lost? And then work your way out to the things that you have in your life, in your little web of belief. And the second thing is consider the general question of how to decide whether to accept the truth of a surprising new claim. How would you investigate this claim to look for things that are true or false about it? So the third thing is when you encounter a significant difference, and you will in the next few weeks, a significant difference between you and someone else on what you both consider to be true, approach it with them with a spirit of generosity. Resist the temptation, please, to demonize the other. Seek to understand at a deeper level, by listening. What a hard thing that is, listening. As hard as it may be. It's one of my biggest faults is I like to talk before I listen, as you can see. Remember, finally, that Jesus would listen first and never demonize another. His response would never be filled with hatred or with any sense that the person was somehow less a child of God. Think of this young man in the gospel. Remember, Jesus always gives us the invitation to travel with him toward a better point of wisdom. Even when we reject his invitation, the door is always open. Amen.